Hey, what's going on? I am Alex Southey, and you are listening to a bonus episode of Your Worst Song. I had the mixing engineer extraordinaire, come on today, and I've got cat extraordinaire right here. Hello. Hello, Mabel. You're trying to have my coffee? This is probably so annoying for people that aren't listening. I'm sorry. It was a great chat with Alex. We've known each other for a few years now. He served as my mixing engineer and producer for Common Fantasies. If you're familiar with some of my music, he's worked with a bunch of great people. I will read you his bio. Alex Gamble is a seasoned mixing engineer with experience working for labels and artists across the globe. His credits include FKA Twigs, Alex Warren, Envy of None, Gucci Mane, Debbie Friday, Fucked Up, and many others. His mixing method is marked by a keen ear for the smallest sonic details, a skill that's been sharpened since his beginnings on analog consoles. Now as an early adopter of Dolby Atmos, Alex is primed to bring music to a new era. And that is exactly right. We talk a lot about Dolby Atmos and how it factors into the current landscape and how it's, who knows where it's going to go and who knows if it's going to be in the lead of technology for listening. We kind of talk about the fact that recorded music first, sort of to start simply, started with mono, then eventually it got to the stereo point. Then there was this brief point with quadraphonic, brief point with other like versions of stereo, and now we're at Dolby Atmos. And it's kind of like, to put it extremely simply, it's kind of like a way to mix in 3D as though it's around you and it's not just these two channels that represent left and right. Anyway, we get into the nitty gritty of it, but that was the fun of this one. Alex is such a talented mixing engineer and kind person that I was interested the whole way through. And I think you will be too, even if you don't know too much about that kind of thing. Maybe even more if you don't know that kind of thing. So enjoy. I'm Alex Southey, and you are listening to Your Worst Song.
What about, have you got a coffee on you? Have you got anything?
I don't have a coffee going.
No.
I had my morning coffee already. I'm all set.
So single morning coffee. That's all you're gonna do.
I'll do a single morning coffee at home. I usually get here and I'll make like a decaf. I'm trying to cut down on the caffeine a bit.
Good. Cut down from one coffee, though. That's already
No,
good.
cut down from, like a decade of bad studio habits where for some reason you enter a recording studio and you think it's okay drinking 10 coffees before noon.
Oh, is it not?
It turns out it's quite bad for you.
Yeah, it turns out it's like your heart is running a triathlon, but without all the health benefits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'm cutting from. So I'm doing okay.
Okay, good, nice. Are you one of those people? We're gonna stick with coffee for a little bit. Are you one of those people who, like, you don't need to say if it's Starbucks or whatever, but what I mean is, will you go to like a general place and get it, or are you one of those people who's like, no, I have my favorite Toronto roastery and I go there and whatever?
I'll make it at home, and I'm trying different beans all the time. I don't have like a go-to right now.
You don't have a go-to. Okay.
I got some really, really delicious stuff at St. Lawrence Market last weekend. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
Was it Balzac's?
It's in the... No, not Balzac's. That place is great too.
Yeah.
I love Balzac's. It was actually it's in the new part of the market.
Oh,
the new like one they just opened like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So
I haven't visited, but I heard about it.
Yeah, it's cool. Like they took what we used to be in that like tent like down on the south side.
Yeah.
Shut that down and basically brought it into the new building.
Okay.
And there's a chocolate maker that was in there. So their main thing was like selling chocolate, but they also sold coffee beans, which are amazing.
That makes sense. That place would smell amazing, is my guess. Coffee beans and chocolate. Yeah. That place, yeah.
Yeah, they go hand in hand.
Exactly. Literally, and I would have them in hand. Well, maybe that's how we can get into this. You are you from Toronto or Ontario?
No, I'm not.
Where are you from?
So I was born in St. John, New Brunswick.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. Not to be confused with St. John's in Newfoundland on the island.
Which seems truly like meant to confuse us. I'm sure it was different people, and a lot of people were named John back then, but or they're both named for the Saint John, I guess, popular guy. But I don't know. It seems
I'm not sure
like a
the
big
history.
mistake.
I'm not sure the history of why one got the apostrophe S and one didn't actually.
Right. John owned one, and the other one was just named after him.
Yeah, that's his.
Yeah.
And this one is the person.
Exactly.
Anyways, I don't know.
So you were born there.
Long story short, yeah, I was born in St. John, New Brunswick, home of Moosehead Breweries and Irving Oil and
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, all the St. John things. And so I spent still most of my life there. I lived there until I was about 25 years old.
Oh, okay. Yeah, wow. So you're like a St. John person,
You got it. Yeah, still, I've been away long enough where I don't necessarily feel comfortable like saying like, yeah, I'm an East Coaster because, living as an East Coaster, you kind of
protective of that identity.
You tend to snub Toronto and the rest of Canada a little bit and being like, oh yeah, you guys think you know everything. You think you're the center of the world. And so I'm cautious to, I'm proud of my identity. I'm proud of where I came from, but I'm always cautious to not, what's the word?
Like not oversell now that you've left, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a part of me that's like, if I was still there and thinking of a friend leaving, I'd be like, oh, you're not a Maritimer anymore. But I feel I've always felt like a Maritimer. It's a big part of my identity and how I grew up, and people are so nice and so warm there, and I've
that makes sense. You're a very kind, nice, warm person. As you're saying it, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. That's in addition to just the nurture of your family. I'm sure it maybe just comes from the area.
Yeah, it's a place where you walk out the door and you're seeing people that you see every day, and you're saying hi to them, and even if you don't know the person, you're gonna say hi to them and strike up a conversation.
Wow.
Yeah, like I remember one of the first times that my wife came back to St. John with me to go visit family. We're hanging out with a friend at a local pub, sitting on a patio, and it was me, her, and my friend, and somebody comes and sits down with us, and we start chatting it up with them, and just talking nonsense, whatever. And that lasts for about 10-15 minutes, and then he has to go on his way. And my wife's like, oh, how do you know him? And we're both like, oh, we just met him.
That's insanity. That is insanity to me.
And I dearly miss that. It actually took me a while to get used to people's hesitance to do that in Toronto. I just thought that was a thing. And as it turns out,
no,
people, they put a few more barriers up in a big city. And it actually took me a while to learn that. And I'm at a point now where it's like, well, I'm just going to do it anyway.
Okay, yeah. No, that's good.
I'm just going to live my life and do it anyways. Like, if I meet somebody, instead of handshake, just give them a big hug, because that's what we do. And people generally
are open to it,
accepting of it, and happy with it.
That's funny. Yeah, no, it's definitely true. I feel like people who come here they hear, if they're not from Canada, even, let's say, they hear, oh, Canadians are friendly. And then they come to Toronto and they go, they are not friendly.
It's not that it's not friendly, but not as outwardly friendly as it's advertised.
Yes, it's a little more buttoned up at first. We're all perpetually wrapped in our winter coats, kind of, and just
a little bit.
We're going from A to B. We don't have time to talk about blah blah blah. Even though what we're doing is not actually life or death for the most part.
Yeah.
I feel like there are reasons that Toronto's a little bit like that and other places aren't like that. Or just big city versus less big city. There's that difference. But anyway, we can move off Toronto. I want to hear about how you got into music, because I feel like so many people's, or a lot of the by nature of who I'm talking to on here, a lot of the people got into music and instantly try songwriting and instantly they want to do that. But since I've known you, at the very least, it seemed like you've always been sort of the behind the desk person,
Sure.
so to speak. So how does that start? Does that manifest early where you're like, no, I don't want to play music and I don't want to be Kurt Cobain. I want to be fucking Butch Vig.
Sure, yeah.
You know?
So I started with music playing in bands like my.
That's what I assumed.
Yeah, I played guitar in bands. I still play guitar a lot, just casually at home. But that's how I got started. Learned guitar and then found some people to play with. Made some bands in high school and early university, and get out and play shows locally throughout New Brunswick and the Maritimes.
What was the sound? What was the genre?
There's a few. My first band was like a punk band a la NoFX in high school.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, just like loud,
punk
fast.
in the sense, which punk? Like, are we talking like hardcore punk, Black Flag stuff? Or are we talking like the Ramones, which are kind of different?
More like, I want to say pop punk, but pop punk today is kind of referring to like Blink 182 and things like that.
Yeah.
At that time, that stuff was just getting started, and bands like NoFX were kind of paving the way for that. Like Descendants and things like that. Where
that stuff. Yes.
It was punk, but it was melodic and things like that, and that's kind of what we were going for. Hugely like influenced by bands like NoFX. We used to do a cover of "Stickin' in My Eye" that I'm sure was terrible.
when you first said the band and said NoFX, I thought that you had said your band's name was NoFX. In my head, I was like, oh, so they just renamed their band after their favorite band, and I wasn't going to mention it. And now it makes sense
original.
what you're saying. Okay, it was very based on them not called. So do you remember what it was called?
Yeah. Oh man, this is gonna be embarrassing.
Yeah.
This is gonna be embarrassing, but since it's a podcast about humbling yourself, I'll say it. We were called the Stiffies.
The Stiffies. Oh my God. Okay, well, reveal the age you were when you came up with that at the very least.
Probably about 16 or 17.
That's about right.
Yeah, Mom, were you proud of me?
And I do have Alex's mom. Come on out.
No. Oh, is this Maury Povich?
Yeah, exactly. Now you guys fight.
No, I actually shout out to my parents who were always just like supportive. I'm sure there was a lot going through their head when their son was like playing loud, fast punk in a vulgarly named band.
Yeah. So you said there were 3 that stuck out, or you said a few?
Yeah. So that was like kind of my first one that we would play shows and do anything, and then from there, polar opposites. Played in like this kind of like sort of prog a la early Tool kind of band called Born Under Satellites.
Ooh, cool name though.
Yeah.
Cool name.
I'm really proud of the band name. That's one band name I'm very like super proud of.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was very like, you think
that's well
like
suited
early
for that
Tool
vibe too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like long tunes, complicated drumming, lots of like gent before it was called gent.
Yeah.
And then, I think those were kind of like the main 2 in St. John. Then in university, there was a band I was in called Virgo A, which was like all instrumental. And the first song we wrote was about 21 minutes long.
And where does that name come from, and where does the idea generate for that band?
Virgo A is, I think, the name of a constellation or a galaxy or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I
can see that.
My hazy memory of where the name came from is reflective of the influence we might have been under when we were writing the music and coming up with the names.
All pretty spacey stuff. I see.
Sure. And so the music was. It was always like influenced by, we'd sort of learn about something in outer space and be like, oh man, that's cool. Let's write a song about it.
That's fucking sick. Throw it on there, dude.
Yeah. We would have like a whiteboard up, and we would come up with all the different parts of the music. So we'd write them in like self-contained, like 2-3 minute bits. And
okay. So they're more like
have
medleys.
a whiteboard up, and there was like these little medleys and motifs and things like that.
Okay.
And then, you know, we'd sort of like write them in these like little self-contained parts and then be like, all right, we're going to go from this to this and like sort of arrange the song on the whiteboard and then eventually perform it. And it was super fun.
Would you literally have like, okay, that's the A part, that's the B part down to E, and then you just arranged it based on what was happening?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
We kind of figured it out from there. And write these big, long, epic things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I played guitar in all of those bands, and in Virgo A, I played a little bit of synth too.
Okay, sure.
Anyways, all that to say, that's how I got started with music. Through all those experiences, though, I was always tinkering with the recording side. And,
Were you the guy in those bands that would be doing that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Especially in the Virgo A days.
Okay.
Like as I was coming up and doing that, the tools to actually be able to do that on your own were still like developing. It's not like what it is today where everybody's got an interface and everybody's got a microphone and everybody has the tools to do that. Like, you know, my first studio experience was with the band Born Under Satellites, that second one I mentioned.
Oh, great band. Love that band.
I think our stuff's still out there. I think
really?
you can find it on streaming.
People listening, I'll either put it in the info section for this or just go look it up.
The other day I looked it up and I think it's out there. I don't know who's paying to keep it up.
On Spotify and everything, or Bandcamp, or what?
I think it's on Apple Music at least, as of recently. If not, I've got the files. I could send them to you, and maybe I'll even put them on Bandcamp myself. Because
Born Under Satellites.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes up is a cover on YouTube of Last Song Ever, a Rush cover. Do you remember doing that?
Oh, yeah. I think we might have covered Rush as our last song.
There you go.
Oh, wow. I wonder if that's us. That must be.
It's
got to be.
2008.
Yeah. That sounds... I'm hearing the bleed from your headphones right now.
Oh, shit. Sorry about that.
I'm trying to recognize if it's us.
Oh, it's Tom Sawyer.
Yeah. That's it. That was us. That was us.
Cool. That's great.
I as an aside, Rush has been and still remains like a huge inspiration musically.
As they should be. Like as Canadians, as musicians, sound on their albums and stuff, it's all super interesting.
Always been obsessed. They're my jam.
Have you ever met with any of them?
Yes.
Oh, really? Wow.
We're jumping ahead a bit, but yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'll draw it back.
No, it's okay. I did. I was really lucky recently. I met Alex Southey, the guitarist.
So cool.
While he was here with Rheostatics.
Okay, yes. I heard about that in the interview with Dave. Yeah, so that's cool. Tell me about that experience. He seems incredibly nice, not to mention super talented at guitar.
Like the sweetest, nicest, most generous person. And
there are some bands, where you feel like, I don't know if I would want to meet them in person. They seem like really talented, but maybe dark or hard to get along with or whatever. The guys in Rush just kind of seemed like dads.
I think it's what really appeals to their fan base too, because growing up listening to their music, I always felt like I identified with that. I mean, going back to that sort of, you know, identifying as the friendly Canadian sort of thing. I see that in them without ever having met them before.
Yes.
But you never know what it's going to be like when you meet your heroes, right?
Yes. And so, sorry, go ahead.
But the Alex Southey thing was, you know, I think like the engineer on the session, he knew that I was a humongous Rush fan, and he knew it would mean a lot for me to just even be able to shake Alex's hand and meet him. And you know, it's something built up.
Oh yeah,
like what I would say, what I would do if I ever met somebody from my favorite band. And so yeah, I got a chance to meet him because I knew Rheostatics. I'd worked on their previous record, and so I knew them. So it wasn't awkward for me to go in the studio and say hi and get introduced to Alex. But shook his hand, got introduced. Forget what I said, probably something stupid. And but then
Tom
he was
Sawyer rules, dude.
could have
Wayne.
been,
Yeah.
could have been. I have no idea. But then he's like, "Hey, I heard you got a Dolby Atmos room in the studio," and I was like, "Yeah, I do." He's like, I need a room to work on some Dolby Atmos stuff with another project of mine. Let's talk about it. I was like, "Oh, okay." And then like later on when there was a break in the session, he came in the room and he wanted to hear some stuff. I played him some music I did. I played him a song from this artist Selena Martin, really amazing Canadian artist who's living abroad now. That was one of the first Atmos mixes I ever did. Played it for him and he loved it.
Wow.
One thing leads to another. And Alex is asking me to mix a record for him in Dolby Atmos for his band Envy of None.
That is crazy.
And so it just went from this whole thing of like, idolizing them my whole life to just being like, finally I get to shake his hand and just be like, yeah.
Yeah.
There it is. Met somebody from Russia. And then it was never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd actually be collaborating with somebody from Russia in a meaningful way, because he was really involved. Like it was not was not side project energy that was being brought into this. Like he was really creatively and emotionally invested and involved in this music, and I could tell it was important to everybody in the band and especially Alex. It was really inspiring, actually.
Wow. It is inspiring to hear that well, from a bunch of different angles, but also just the fact that like he's at the age that he's at, he's had the career that he's had with this other huge band, and he's still bringing that intensity and creative like passion to the stuff that he's working on is cool.
Yeah, I mean, to like even connecting it with some of my early experiences in studio, because that first band I was telling you about, Born Under Satellites, that was the first time I went in a studio, and I think I was 17 or 18. Everything was new, everything was cool, and just the like my enthusiasm level then for like, oh my god, can we try this? Oh, I can't believe you can overdub and layer, and like, oh my god, that is so cool. And now I take it for granted. It's just part of the job.
Yeah.
And enter Alex Lifeson into my life, and it was honestly like looking at 18-year-old me in the mirror, and his enthusiasm level for, oh my god, can we try this, can we try that, this is and like just like so emotionally moved when he was hearing something that like fit his vision. It was truly inspiring.
So that must come from the fact that, because obviously he's been in it decades longer than you. He's going to studios and stuff.
Yeah, he's seen it all.
He's seen it all, except this thing that is now one of your specialties, Dolby Atmos. So it must come from the fact that you showed him the next thing.
Maybe it certainly could have been. I know getting into like a new way of doing things definitely reinvigorated my hunger and my drive and my love for doing this, because there's new frontiers being paved, and there's new ways of thinking, there's new ways of producing, there's new ways of mixing that are really still being figured out, and it's exciting. Sometimes you nail it, sometimes you fall flat on your face, but it's all like really cool and exciting, and to not be super bound by rules and best practices, although you should still have some standards and best practices that you follow, but the aesthetics of how to make music in this new format, Dolby Atmos, are still largely under development, and it certainly could have been part of that enthusiasm, but I do just genuinely think that he's a very creative person and just has like an extreme hunger to make music, and despite having absolutely nothing to prove to anybody
certainly
in his career, because I mean, god, he's toured the world, he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Even if Rush had made one of their albums and none of the rest, they would still be an amazing band that you'd be intimidated to meet.
There's nothing to prove, like it's just, but it reinforced to me something I always believed and will definitely continue to carry with me after that experience was having something to prove is not a reason to be in this field. You should be in it because you have something to say. You have something to communicate.
Right.
You have
As opposed
something
to prove from an ego type of thing. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Like you shouldn't be in it for, look at my trophies, look at what I did, look at my resume. It should be there's just something inside you that needs to come out and needs to be expressed, and it's very obvious from that entire band that was the case. But I was, with considering the context of Alex's career, I just was particularly inspired getting to collaborate with him in that level.
Well, speaking of enthusiasm, why don't we go back to when you first started professionally on the desk side of things? So you said that it was like piecemeal happening with your own projects, but what happens when you're actually hired outside of that and it becomes more, real in a different way, so to speak?
I mean, it all kind of started as just like, I'm going to get some gear, I'm going to record my own bands and figure it out. And then started like reaching out to other people locally and figuring out how to do it for them.
But how do you even sell yourself at that point? Do you just go, hey, look, you're reaching out to acquaintances or friends in the scene and you can say, my music sounds decent. I was the one who recorded it. Maybe let me try it for you. Is it as simple as that?
There was definitely some of that, like people from like within the music scene, people I knew.
Yeah.
But what really launched it is I ended up going to an audio school.
Right.
And
okay.
I went
I think
there.
You mentioned this to me.
Yeah, I went there when I was 26 or 27.
So you want to shout it out? What was it called?
So it was called the Nimbus School of Recording Arts. It's no longer a school anymore. It was in Vancouver.
Okay.
At that time, it was a really amazing place, and what drew me to it was when I went there to take a tour of the school. I'd already been to tours of like 3 or 4 audio schools at that time.
Yeah.
But when I went there, it wasn't like a sales pitch that they were giving me, which is what I got from a lot of the other art schools, and I think seems pretty common. They're trying to get people in the door, right?
Yeah,
It makes sense running a business.
Exactly.
With them, it was like they were interviewing me. They sat me down. They're just like, this. Do you really want to do this? This is hard.
Wow.
Wow. Like a lot of people that come through this school, they end up not staying in this industry. It's late nights. It's a lot of thankless work. You got to really want it. And it was like a speech. They're almost trying to scare me out of it.
Yeah.
I appreciated that personally.
Even then.
I really did, because at that time in my life, I really wanted this for myself, because I was working desk jobs up to that point. I had already been to university already. I had a degree in mechanical engineering, and I actually worked like professionally for like long enough to have a professional designation where I could stamp documents and say Alex Gamble, the mechanical engineer, approves this build. Like, yeah. But and I was very good at that. Like I'm a technically minded person. I'm good at math, physics, and science and all that stuff. So I had a skill for that.
Right.
But there was this other side of me that was always trying to apply that to helping people realize their creative vision. Because I'd been in bands but fell in love with the recording process more than anything. I just thought it was like a nice match for my skill set, where I felt like a creative person. I love music. I love all different kinds of music.
Yeah.
As I said, I started in this like crusty punk band and ended up writing 20-minute prog songs.
Yeah,
like, kind of all over the place.
It's what you need, because you're going to be taking theoretically. You're going to be
taking everything on, and I always felt my role in those bands was kind of helping fulfill whatever the band wanted to do.
Right.
You want to be a punk band? All right, I'll figure out punk it. Or
right.
You want to
Which
be a
is
prog
very
band?
transferable to now what you're doing. You assess the identity they want for the sound, and then you go from there, kind of.
Exactly. And so I I always felt strongly like if I could get put in a position to do that kind of work, that I would enjoy it, and hopefully people would enjoy the work that I do. So when they sat me down and gave me that speech of like, do you really, really want this? It's just like, yeah, I do. And it was motivating. I really took from that like lecture, like, okay, like got to take this seriously.
Yeah.
So that school was great. And it was awesome because they would run classes during the day, but then at 9 p.m., the studios in the school would stay open all night. They, hired
getting
some
used to the hours.
Pretty much. A good time to get used to it.
Yeah.
But I mean, long story short, like if you could convince somebody from the local music scene to stay up all night with you so you could record them for free,
Oh yeah,
go at it and bring them into the studio and make their record.
That's a very attractive pitch. I would imagine as a up and coming musician hearing that.
For sure.
Yeah.
I met some really like good friends and good collaborators, people I still collaborate with to this day. There's this artist who's living in Spain now, Adam Giles Levy. And, we made our first recordings together in that studio, staying up all night. And,
that's nice.
And, we still collaborate on recordings together as of even recently.
Wow.
So, that really
that gets the ball rolling.
Yeah. That like gave me the confidence to be like, yes, I can do this. And also just like gave me the hands-on time with real recording equipment in real settings to like experiment, try things, make mistakes in a low stakes environment.
Exactly. And that's the kind of thing where like you can only learn theoretically so much before you actually need to start fiddling with knobs and stuff,
Yeah, I don't think there's enough schools in Canada right now that abide
do
to that.
Yeah.
Like ethos. Like it's
probably tough to get the funding for what you would need for soundproofing rooms and all that. I mean, why am I playing devil's advocate? Who cares?
They had to close down their school, so you're probably right. I feel I shouldn't make light of it. I feel bad that had to happen because it was an amazing place. It was very formative for me to be there. Shout out to all the instructors that, helped me along the way and all that sort of stuff. No, you
clearly talk about it like reverently. People listening will know you are not trying to actually make fun of it.
Yeah, not all. It was a great space, and at that time, it was a really awesome environment. And usually, like when you were doing those sessions overnight, you were seeing familiar faces. Like there was 3 or 4 other people that had the same attitude as you that also weren't sleeping that year.
Right. And you all sort of like, you end up having this camaraderie just through the fact that you're the ones that are doing that.
So, whether it was me bringing in an artist or not, I would just go to the school at night and see what's happening. There'd be a session where, there'd be a session where, somebody's setting up some drum microphones and be like, hey, you need a hand? And start setting them up and getting the patch bay going and all that sort of stuff. Like there was never an excuse where you could say, oh no, I can't, get my hands on gear tonight.
Yes. And you really wrung all you could from that experience. How long was the program?
It was 1 year. So it was an intensive year. I made sure to get everything out of it that I possibly could have. Both in terms of opportunities to like get in their studios, learn from the instructors, and also get out into local studios.
Yeah.
Because all the instructors that were there were current working professionals. So the tendency was that if they saw a student who, was showing some interest in doing it and some aptitude in doing it, that they would invite you to come to the studio, and you would quickly learn that you got a lot to learn still.
Wow.
But one of those experiences led me to eventually coming to Toronto because I was at a studio interning on a session. It was called Afterlife. It was the name of the studio. The business is still running. They've moved buildings now, but they're still going strong as far as I know. And this producer Leon Tani, he he was flown in from Toronto to be a producer on a record at this studio, and so I was on that record for a couple weeks with this band called Siskiyou.
Mm-hmm.
And things kind of worked out really well. Like
so
the record,
you move though.
Well, it kind of happened slowly. Like I remember while I was in that session, just overhearing Leon on some calls, and it sounded like he was talking about some studio that was getting built, or I don't know. Like couldn't really tell. And then I think it was either towards the end of that session or maybe like later through like emails or DMs that he was like, "Hey, I'm building this new space in Toronto," and
you were like, "I know, I overheard."
Wink, wink.
Yeah. Okay. And so you just took it and ran with that.
I took that hint and ran with it. Like it wasn't like a, "Hey, we want to hire you" thing. It was a very like music industry.
Oh,
like, hey, there might be an opportunity here. Yeah. Not that Leon's a wishy-washy person, but you just know how it is. It's just like, hey, we might need some help.
Yes.
And I was just like, well, that sounds fun. I'm gonna pack the car and move to Toronto. And worst case scenario, I'm in a great environment and in a great city to find other opportunities. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Luckily, that opportunity blossomed into, the building I'm still in today, which is the studio that is now called Union Sound Company.
Wow.
At that time when I started, it didn't have a name yet. It barely had walls up. They'd just gotten the building, and they demolished everything that was inside of it. And
do you know what it was before? What kind of building?
I believe it was a photo studio. They tell me stories about this like big like infinity wall, like where they, would do like photo shoots and things like that.
Yeah,
I never saw it.
Huh.
I never saw it in that state, but my understanding is that's what it was immediately before this. And I think before that it was like an auto repair shop or something like that.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Because like actually on the rear wall here where I'm at, like they had to seal up like a big garage door.
Oh, really? Wow.
So I think I remember them saying there was an iteration where it used to be that. I could be wrong on that though.
Interesting. Well, now it looks very professional and lovely.
Now you wouldn't know it.
No, not at all.
But they basically leveled the entire interior and rebuilt everything to how they wanted it, with like proper sound isolation and all that sort of stuff, which was really cool because I got to, as my first thing at an audio school, just see like what goes into building a professional studio.
That's true. You didn't just walk into something finished. You actually got to see something be built and learn a lot more.
Yeah, it's useful context because like when I run sessions in here still, like, I don't know if it's like all the time, but like sometimes like when I'm running sessions, I had that confidence of knowing like what's behind the walls.
Right. Which I see why that would provide maybe like a general confidence that comes through comfort where you're working. But what is it anything in addition to that? Do you literally think, oh, well, this is where this used to be, so that's why the sound is a little odd here?
Yeah, like I do have a little bit of context that way. It usually comes up like when there's a really intense recording session that's really pushing the boundaries of what the studio can do. Because like the day-to-day stuff is very just like microphone goes in here, turn this knob, get sound. But it's like when you get that like 11-piece band that everybody wants like their own custom headphone mix, and you got amps running like from different booths to another booth and things like that. All when you like really get into those edge cases of like, right, oh yeah, I remember we ran that extra line so that we could do this, and I'm not like reaching and feeling panicked to see if I can do things. I'm remembering like, oh yeah, we planned for this sort of thing. We use it once a year, but it's there and I remember.
Wow. And so, maybe just going more deeply into that example, I want to hear what those to the edge recording sessions are like. So does that make it tough because of all of the ambient sound and all the wires and all that sound that would, or buzz that would provide and bleed and stuff? Is that partially why it's tough? Or like, because when you say 11-piece orchestra or whatever, what are the actual issues that come in?
Yeah, so the big thing is getting getting as much isolation as you can, depending on the session. So I mean, I'll bring in like a specific example. Like few years ago, I had this artist in named Tanika Charles. So it wasn't like an 11-piece orchestra, but it was, they wanted.
Sorry, alarm's going off.
Oh shit! Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So Tanika Charles, I've actually.
So
she's cool. I've
she's
spoken to her before.
She's amazing.
Yeah. So
unbelievable voice, unbelievable music, and one of those artists where she makes you a better engineer because everything that comes in through the microphone sounds great because her music's awesome and her voice is absolutely killing. But yeah, she came in for a session where they wanted to do a live video, and they wanted everybody to like be in the room together, and
also have it sound amazing.
And so you start having to like reach a bit deeper into your bag of like engineering tricks when you want to do that, because the last thing I ever want to do as an engineer is say no. You can't do that.
Right.
I feel like my role in all this is to be a facilitator. So I can, in the planning phases of a project like this, explain like that there's balances between like perfect isolation and being in the room together and getting that person-to-person feedback. And in their case, they wanted to do a video, so it was just better for the shot to have people in the room together.
You know enough. You know how to articulate a message that like preps them for the level of what they're gonna get.
Exactly. So, but at the end of the day, my job is a facilitator of people's visions. So if they, tell me that's what they want and that's what's integral to the project, then I say, all right, do my best to make it happen. So in situations like that, you're balancing perfect isolation versus perfect recording and what gets them the best performance. And so like you might use things like putting up dividers in the room. So in this case, there was Tanika in the room. There was a couple backup vocalists in the room. It might have been 2 or maybe 3 backup vocalists in the room. No, there was just 2. There was a piano in the room with all those vocalists. There was, I think, was the guitar amp in the room with us? It might have been.
Is it in the room with us?
Or was it in the room with them? So there was a lot going on, and it wasn't a traditional recording in the sense that I wasn't isolating everything. So there was little things like, you get the sound up, you get like a perfect piano sound, let's say. And it's a great sound if you're just recording piano, but then you get those vocalists in there and you start to hear the piano through the vocal mic.
Yeah. So other than the physical dividers, what do you do? Is it studio magic?
So there's a couple things I do in situations like that. I always get technical when I come on these podcasts.
This is why you're here. Unless you have crazy, drinking stories or some other kind of salacious thing you want to tell me.
I'm rather boring that way.
Then this is what I brought you on for.
But like, okay, so you reach a little deeper into your bag of like engineering knowledge. So for example, every microphone has what's called a polar pattern to it. Like maybe even
is that where it's like there's an omnidirectional and then there's stuff like that.
Yeah. Like it's usually like somewhere on the microphone itself. Like on my microphone, it's like a little heart shape. That's what's called a cardioid. So in front of the mic, it's picking up everything, and at the back of the mic, it's not picking up very much. And so there's also like this special kind of microphone called hypercardioid, which is like you really got to be right in front of it to hear anything. And anything on the sides and anything behind it, you don't hear.
Right. Okay. I think I was confused before because I just generally think of mics as here it is and it'll pick up everything around it. But there are literally directional mics.
They all have their own like profile of like where you're going to get the best sound and where it's going to reject sound around it. So, you know, again, I had that knowledge and education to understand like, oh yeah, that they didn't just tell me that just so I can memorize it and say it on a test. Like that's a tool I can use now.
Yeah.
Because I want to hear just voice in front of this microphone and I don't want to hear the piano. So I'll use hypercardioid microphones where I possibly can.
Right.
I think on Tanika, she actually used this microphone, the SM7, which is a cardioid, but it's a very tight sort of thing. Like if I kind of move over this way, it gets, you know, a little, now it's better, right?
For sure. Of course. Yeah.
So knowing how a microphone works, knowing the physics of it is really key as well, because you're trying to optimize every little bit of isolation you can get in an unisolated environment, and just physical distance from player to player. Like if you're the microphone's going to pick up the thing it's close to, so maybe don't put the vocalist right next to the piano.
Yeah.
and you know you get that figured out, and then everybody gets their headphones on. They're just like, oh, I got too much piano in the headphones, and you realize they're turning up their vocal, but there's a little bit of piano in it, and so then you got to go another step, and you know, maybe instead of having the piano lid facing out into the room, you got to face it away from the vocalist, so the sound is projecting in the other direction.
Yes.
So like really like diving deep into like,
that's good for your engineering brain, like you said.
And that's it. Like I really, you know, there's a lot of engineers and producers that like admittedly say like they don't know anything about the physics and things like that, and they do amazing.
Rick Rubin.
Yeah, just like a classic example. And, you know, plenty of other people who I really admire and whose work sounds great and is amazing, where they didn't take that path. I did, and I feel like that technical knack and that technical knowledge empowers me and empowers the artists who entrust me to capture and mix their work.
Yes.
Because I can always fall back on it, sometimes to my detriment. Well, I always need to remind myself to like be a little adventurous and throw caution to the wind from time to time, like maybe more often than others do.
It's a little grass is always greener, right? Like
sure,
and also you can both achieve the same things. Like the people who don't have the technical know-how might end up with the sound that you're talking about, but they won't have the confidence going into it because they know they have the knowledge to back it up, unlike you. So I see the benefits of being you.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helped when I was transitioning into this new Dolby Atmos format, which, like, you know, the thing there is it's, you know, when you're mixing in stereo, when I finish a mix, it's a 2-channel file, right? Left speaker, right speaker.
Yeah.
With Dolby Atmos, you're creating this like 3D soundscape.
Yes.
And as I was transitioning into learning how to do that, there was just like, I kind of had to abandon like a lot of techniques that I learned over the years.
Because it's been like, like 70 years of stereo only, not past that?
Sure, yeah. And there's so much knowledge out there now. Like you can go on, like when I was first starting, there was nothing. Like you just had to figure it out. But now, like you can go on YouTube and somebody's just like, okay, look, when I put this compressor on the mix, listen to how it sounds. It's awesome.
Yes.
And so like people can learn now, like, oh yeah, if I have this compressor and I put it on the mix, it's going to sound awesome. When I got into Dolby Atmos, I found having like a bit more of an analytical approach to doing all this was an asset, because you actually kind of have to take it a step further when you're mixing in a new environment, and you not say like, okay, that compressor sounds awesome, therefore I should use that compressor. No, not necessarily. That compressor sounds awesome. Why did it make it sound awesome? And how do you make something sound equally awesome, but in a completely reimagined soundstage? And it might not be that compressor. So reach into your bag of knowledge, think what that compressor was doing to the sound. It might be the right tool again to use in a new format, but chances are it's not. And so think about what you're going for. Think of tools to get you there, and it's all just kind of getting back to like foundational engineering stuff, making that transition.
And you have to enjoy that. I think
I love
you are
doing
someone
that.
who enjoys it, and if you don't, that sounds like it would be really tedious and frustrating. You know,
for sure. But I would just like stay up all night trying to solve these problems.
You're like, I love this.
Yeah.
I think maybe we're a little. I mean, I'm a little late in asking us to do this, but people have probably pieced it together if they don't know. But I bet a lot of people are coming here interested in hearing what Dolby Atmos is without actually knowing what it is. So it's a little bit like you said. It's like you mix as though you're wearing a 3D like helmet or something, and sounds can come from anywhere, not just your headphones. That's how I would describe it when you showed it to me.
Yep. So the way it works is like when you're mixing for stereo, which I do a lot of still.
It's still the norm.
It's not
right?
like throwing shade on it. Like actually
No.
like working in 2-channel audio is I do it all the time, and I take great pride in the art of doing that. But just to further your question, like Dolby Atmos, the way it's working is it's not 2-channel audio. It's not even like 5-channel audio or 6-channel audio, rather, like 5.1 was. Because like when you do a finished mix, like even if you're just like working at home and in Logic or Ableton or whatever you use, you send a 2-channel file to somebody, like a 2-channel stereo file. Channel 1 goes to their left speaker and channel 2 goes to their right speaker. When I finish a Dolby Atmos mix, I might have a 100-channel file to send to people. I might have a 10-channel file to send to people. What I'm doing is I'm mixing what's called an object-based format. Again, oh my God, I'm sorry if I'm getting way too technical.
No,
this
is what I want.
Your fun podcast.
No, this is, well, whatever. It's fun for me. If people don't like it, they could click it off. Just kidding. Leave it on, but mute it and go do something else so I get the views.
Anyways, all that to say, my 100-channel file isn't because I have 100 speakers in my studio. It's because each like channel in my final mix represents an audio stream. So let's say, for the sake of argument, channel 1 is a vocal. And so I say vocal goes to channel 1. But there's this additional layer of information that goes with that audio stream called metadata. And that metadata has an X, Y, Z coordinate in it. So that those coordinates, what I do is I say, take that lead vocal on channel 1 and put it just up a little and into the room a little, and that's good. And so it's each stream carries instructions with it. So then, and that's my mix. Like my mix is like 50 or 100 or whatever of those streams that come with those spatial instructions. So, like,
spatial instructions. I think that's a really good way to put it, actually. I think it's like it's not just, it's like, yes, you've had the singer sing and you have that track, but now you can move the perspective of where that's coming from.
Where that's going to go, exactly.
Or whatever you want to call it, yeah.
Yeah, where the listener's going to experience that sound coming from. And so for that reason, like the technology is really cool. And I think, whether this whole immersive audio or Dolby Atmos thing survives in its current state, when that was explained to me, that made a lot of sense in terms of how we should deliver audio content.
It's how I thought mixing was done until I got into a room and was like, oh, the technology's not there yet. And then it finally was there.
Yeah, it's before it was just kind of flattening into like this sound goes to this speaker and you need these 2 speakers or these 5 speakers in this position.
This is actually more logical for someone who's not familiar with what it was before. If they were just walking into a studio and they go, yeah, why wouldn't it be this 3D projection?
Exactly. So now like that technology allows me to do that, and it allows it to be scalable because we haven't even talked about how that gets played back yet. So every playback system has like a little decoder chip in it that takes that instruction and says like, yeah, I could do that for you. And
right, because some systems can't actually convey the Dolby Atmos mix that you've put. It'll just revert to stereo, or it'll revert to
it can.
Okay.
It can revert back to a stereo mix. Like, for example, right now, the room I mix in is configured as what's called a 916 room. There's 9 speakers around me on the ground level, or sorry, 914 rather. 9 on the ground level, there's 1 subwoofer, and there's 4 speakers above me. A lot of mixes I did in my old studio was in a 714 room, 7 speakers on the ground, 4 up top, and a sub. I could bring any of those mixes into a Cineplex and they'll play back. So it doesn't matter how many speakers you have anymore, or whether you have AirPods or headphones or a soundbar, or like a car that has like a new system that can decode this stuff. All I did was say, put the vocal there, and the sound system figures out how to put the vocal there.
But it needs to have the decoder ability.
Exactly.
So
there's a layer of decoding.
Yes. What are some popular, like Apple Music has that, right? It has the ability to play that.
Yep. So they've built an ecosystem now where basically if you have Apple Music and you've got their AirPods, you could be like the least technical person in the world, but all you got to do is like turn them on and press play. And if a Dolby Atmos mix is available, it plays
just
back, right?
Just the classic AirPods that, like, I know there's different generations, but like not a special Dolby Atmos AirPod. It's just, I know this sounds like a fucking
like
Apple commercial right now.
I think it's their their newest ones as of like 4 or 5 years ago. Like any of the Bluetooth ones that they sell will be able to support it. There's also
I don't mean like 2008.
Not like the wired old school
no.
ones, right? But that said, actually there is that actually knows if you've got like something with a wire plugged into your aux cable, and then it like intelligently assumes like, oh, he's got like non-AirPods on, and then there's like a non-AirPod version that decodes into the headphones too. So it just like kind of scales with the playback system and says like, okay, this person has this speaker on the back end, so I'm going to tailor the sound that this mixer curated for that playback system. So it's a really interesting way of doing it. That said, just because you got a full 3D soundstage doesn't always mean you use the whole damn thing. Like I said, I work in stereo a lot still, and I think there's still a lot of important ways we produce music in 2 channels, and there's a lot of important things to take from how we've enjoyed 2-channel audio over the last 7 or 8 decades.
Sometimes the limitations on art are like what produce the most creative things as well. Who knows what would have come out if we were all just used to this way of mixing. You kind of said something. We're slowly moving towards wrapping it up, don't worry.
It's all good, man.
You said something interesting, which and it's something I thought about, because of this change with Dolby Atmos coming into it. You said, who knows if Dolby Atmos will remain in its current form. Current form, we can probably assume it won't remain that way just because that's the nature of things updating or whatever. But like there was mono for decades, and then there's been stereo for decades and slightly different versions of stereo and whatever. This is the next jump. Do you think the next jump will come much sooner than like 70 years from now, right? I assume we're going to keep cutting down on time as it changes, and I'm curious if you think that'll happen, and if so, what's the next thing going to look like? How do you get past doing something as a 3D idea?
I'm going to quote somebody named Kerry Thomas, who I saw on a webinar yesterday. Okay. He used to work at Dolby, and he was one of the really groundbreaking people in terms of getting immersive audio off the ground for music, especially. He was the person you could call and talk to and being like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me know what I'm doing?
If I could just jump in super quick. It's weird that, because you said immersive audio, and I feel like people will understand intuitively what that means, even if they don't know the literal definition.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm shocked because I feel like surround sound for movies has been around forever, or a long time, decades. Yeah. So it's weird to me that it's a little bit like music mixing is only catching up now in an odd way or a big way.
Yeah, there's been iterations of it. I was talking with a colleague yesterday, and they were talking about some of the early attempts at like 5.1 sound.
Okay.
There was even quadraphonic sound for vinyl records back in the day.
I was going to bring that up, and then I thought, is that a rabbit hole that we need to go down? But I've heard of quadraphonic because of the Quadrophenia album by The Who.
Yeah, there was quadraphonic records being made. The console that I had that there was at my school in Vancouver was a SSL console, and it was set up to mix in quadraphonic, and because that was going to be the big trend at the time, and it never really got off the ground. But now we're seeing something a lot different, just in terms of the economics of it. I'm finding
right.
Again, it's hard for me to.
It was probably a shit ton of hardware and expensive, which is why only huge bands like The Who could use it.
Very niche.
And now digital technology has kind of, and it's I'm sure less to do Dolby Atmos than it was to do quadraphonic at the time.
Sure.
If you match it. So is that kind of what you're saying? Like economically, it's better and it's simpler in a way.
That and like Apple is really driving this innovation in a big way.
There's a whole playlist that you're on sometimes and stuff.
You
right?
get on playlists if you've got a Dolby Atmos version. You get extra streaming royalties if you have a Dolby Atmos version.
Which makes sense because for people listening, by the way, it does cost more usually to get a Dolby Atmos mix versus just like the stereo mix, which makes sense, but it's something to note.
But there are incentives there, I guess is what I'm saying. Whereas when I talk to people who are doing some of those early surround mixes for music, it doesn't sound like the economic ecosystem was quite the same as what we're seeing today. It was more like artists and engineers driving it back in the day.
And probably legacy artists who had the money, like I said. They were going to go, okay, Bob Dylan, gatefold vinyl with all the, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, major labels are very, very incentivized for every new release and new artist that they put out to have it. They want to give it a shot to get heard and get seen, right?
And are you finding that across all genres? Like, would somebody like Sabrina Carpenter have a version of it and also a punk band?
Yep, in a lot of cases, like the new Turnstile record has it.
Okay.
I was working on this like very traditional like roots bluegrass thing the other day, and they wanted a version of it, but the MO of that was very much like, this is traditional roots and bluegrass. Please don't spin my upright bass around your head. Like,
yeah, you make it into like Echoes by Pink Floyd, but it's bluegrass.
Don't do that. But that said, like again, coming back to just because you got all these speakers doesn't mean you got to use every single one in like a gimmicky kind of way.
Just because you could do it doesn't mean you should do it.
And I've worked a long time in stereo and understand like what a artists like that would be going for. Like they want it to sound like a band on a stage. So having 3D audio can really, really, really make it sound like a band on a stage. It doesn't have to be sounds coming from everywhere, right?
Yes.
So yeah, there's a lot of motivations for people to produce this content. So I think this is going to keep growing. But back to quote Carey, who was like an early pioneer of this stuff. Somebody asked him in this webinar yesterday, where do you, like, kind of like what you asked me, where do you see this going, 5 years?
Yeah.
And what he said was he wants to see the tag of immersive audio or Dolby Atmos or whatever. He wants that to just go away. It can just be audio.
Yes. So that it becomes, people begin to think of it as the standard instead of this extra thing.
Exactly. Or, just another tool to realize whatever it is you're trying to realize. Because this isn't just isolated to music. Look at like sports broadcasts and things like that. How cool would it be to make you feel like you're in the stadium? And they do that, right?
Right. Okay, I see.
So it's
true.
It's not about adding this like immersive tag to it in his eyes, which I thought was really interesting considering like the angle he was coming at it from.
Well, it's interesting because it's like when you first come to the idea, that would be the obvious selling point, and it makes sense to name it that way. But then in that way, it reminds me a little bit of like people now, after seeing what happened to 3D in movies, like, ooh,
Right.
you can go to a movie theater and see it in 3D. That ended up kind of being a trend. There
Little
are
bit.
3D versions of it, but
Yeah.
it's still seen as an extra thing.
Mhm.
Whereas maybe people at the time when 3D was coming out thought, no, this is going to be how people see movies now. But
Yeah.
this, like you're saying, Carrie was saying, they want it to be the latter.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that they want like it to take over everything, but just like the way I deliver it just makes a lot of sense to me. It's just audio, and
It's just audio.
I don't see my job any differently working in this context. I'm a facilitator of people's visions and people's creative ideas, and this is a great tool to do it. And it's really gratifying because I feel like in a lot of situations when people hear their mix done in 3 dimensions and they hear all the isolation and things hitting you from the angles that they always kind of wished that they were.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've seen people get like visibly emotional in the studio with me, and it's really moving. There's something about being inside of the music that triggers this different feeling.
Well, it's like closer to reality. It's bizarre. It's closer to reality, or reality.
And it can be like very hyper real too.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But again, man, like if somebody comes to me and is just like, we're just going to do stereo, and it's just like, whether that's a creative decision, economic decision, or some combination of both, I'm an engineer. Like,
well, yeah, exactly.
And,
as much
and
as
it
you
goes
love
back to those
Dolby,
conversations where like, you know, when people come to me with their visions, like I'll talk about advantages, disadvantages, how we plan it, that sort of thing. But when we say, here's what we're doing, I'm down. And so like I invested in a great stereo setup when I moved into this room too, because I still see that as an important part of the creative process. And again, I don't discriminate on how you want to do it. I'll admit it.
Sure.
I'm here to just do my best for you. And whether it's classical or folk or rap or death metal, like bring it on. Like, let's go.
Yeah. No, I see how for you those would all be fun problems to solve.
Yeah, it is problem solving, isn't it?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
It's
because I'm sure also if you were let's say you were just one genre of whatever, you would get to the point where you could almost have everything in second nature and do it blind.
Sure,
it's probably a lot more fun to go one day rap, one day folk, one day death metal, right?
Well, there's people that they make a choice to build a career being like the person for that genre, or
which I
maybe
understand
the choice gets made for them because something blew up or whatever, right?
Right. It's like typecasting, but for music engineers.
A little bit, I've seen it happen to people for better, for worse. But you know, when somebody comes to me with like a specific genre, and there's certain genres where like there are very like specific things that people are going for, like, you know, a lot of like prog metal or like pop punk and things like that, or even rap or whatever. Like there's a lot of expectations for how that's going to sound. And
can you give an example from one of those? Like rap, I'm curious about, because because I'm most curious about it because I'm least familiar with it. So what's something that would come up with that?
Just like the way that the vocal's supposed to sound and how it's supposed to sit in the mix. Like it's all about like really hearing that verse and getting the beat to sound heavy and getting it to be like bassy and intense, but still loud and punishing is like a really intense challenge.
Right.
And there's producers that have built careers on doing that. Not to mention, like in a lot of the genres I'm mentioning, and rap especially, there's a big cultural aspect to it. As we alluded to earlier, like I'm a white dude from New Brunswick. Like I didn't grow up on rap, and I don't expect rappers that hire me to think that I did.
Yeah.
And I completely respect the decision of anybody within their music that has like a strong cultural identity. If they want to bring somebody up from that culture and have them do the work, it's just like, yes, like do that. Like if that's what makes you feel good. But
do the work and you are also there. So it's like we've got people from different perspectives.
Exactly.
Okay,
And
I see.
so, but all that to say, like, I try to be upfront with people. Like, I'm not really a genre guy. Like,
Yeah.
if you're coming to me with something and you want like those very specific best practices that come from that genre, let me hook you up with somebody who does that. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're down to experiment and try something different and maybe take a different path, like, I'm right here for it. Or if you just want somebody to kind of like iron out that last bit of technical detail
Right.
that you're trying to squeeze out of it, I'm here for that too.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that challenge. I love working on different genres. I actually really love working on rap.
Okay,
It's
well,
so much fun.
rappers, take note.
It's like,
Work with Alex.
dude, you like when you're doing this job, you gotta listen to a song over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's not me complaining, but with really good rappers, I'm finding the more I listen to their lyrics over the course of the day, like the really, really good ones, I'm decoding new little like nuances in what they're saying.
Oh, that's the best. Yeah, because
It's
different
so
from
fun.
it's different from a great melody, which can stir something in you emotionally as well. But
Totally.
it is the same thing over and over. Whereas there's subtext to
Bingo.
what rappers are doing. Yeah.
I really enjoy that. So I have a real joy in sort of
Cool.
getting to unlock all those things that
Yeah.
I can tell they built into their lyrics.
That's awesome, and that really separates that. Like the talented ones are able to do that,
Yeah, exactly.
or at least the
So-
ones I find worth listening to.
So yeah, like there's people that do that, but it's never really been me.
Yeah.
Whether that's a good choice or a bad choice, it's who I am, and it's what I bring, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kind of bring a lot of wide perspectives. You'd also be surprised though, like how many things you can take from two projects that have no like commonalities on paper and actually bring them together. Like, since I've been working on a lot of rap music, now when I'm working with rock bands, it's like, all right, I'm going to do like this big heavy tuned 808 and tuck it under the bass guitar in your chorus, and it's
So
going to sound
cool.
awesome. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
so it's amazing what you can learn from these things that seem like they have nothing in common, and that I love too, like unlocking some of those secrets. Just seeing how people work in different genres too, I find fascinating.
Well, maybe because this is a question I was already wondering about, and if I can reframe it slightly, like, who are some? They don't need to be current, but they can be. Who are some of like your people you admire? They can be heroes that worked decades ago, or they can be people you admire now. Who's doing great work that you're like, damn.
Like from the engineering side, or like music?
Yeah, engineering side.
I mean, people right now, like I gotta give a shout out to Chris Stringer, one of the founders and current owners of this space. He's been a huge mentor to me in terms of like getting my career off the ground, gave me some of my early opportunities, and he does really like amazing work himself. There's another local engineer named Howie Beck who's he's worked with like all these awesome artists like Feist and Sarah Harmer and Chili Gonzalez, and
wow, awesome.
I really look up to his career and some of the things he's accomplished, and he just makes everything sound so freaking awesome.
I mean, if I think about those artists' music, they sound fucking great. So it's
makes
great,
sense. And he's a person like who came at it from a very different angle from me. He was kind of that like opposite trajectory I spoke about earlier, where he started as a musician and like knew how he wanted things to sound on recordings and kind of figured it out in a much more organically
didn't have the schooling to
kind
back
of
it
way.
Up. Okay.
Yeah, and that's not to say he's not an incredibly smart dude. He is, but he just came at it from a different place. Where like, I started like with a mechanical engineering degree, and sort of brought this sort of like analytical training from like a top down kind of thing, and
he's all experienced.
Nested it into music, right?
Yeah.
But we have a lot in common despite that, and he does awesome work. There's another great local engineer named Justin Gray, who is another big pioneer for immersive audio. And actually tomorrow he's doing a Luminato Festival event where he's going to do the world premiere of a album that he recorded, and I did a bunch of recording with him a couple of years ago on it. It's called Immersed, and we actually went deep into like new recording techniques you can do that leverage some of these new ways of delivering audio.
That's interesting.
So all those are great. And then just like, other people just in general I idolize. I've always loved like Mark Ronson's like approach to production and creation and things like that. He's a person I've always really looked up to. People like Bruce Sweeting, like Michael Jackson's old engineer.
Oh, okay, sure. Nice.
There's a lot. There's a lot of heroes and a lot of people that came before me, and I'm a big proponent of like knowing where you've been to know where you're going. So
right,
looking back into recording history and
it's good to. It's probably good for your ego size to just be like, yeah, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm not
absolutely
a giant,
Yeah. It's been really cool too, like in my early days of working at Union Sound Company. Like right now, so I'm here renting this room and I'm like basically a full-time mix engineer in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Prior to that, I was kind of the everything guy at the studio. Like I was the assistant engineer, or I could be the house engineer, or just like the coffee runner on any given day. If there was a session, like I was here, and it was so cool to get to see how all sorts of different producers worked, and whether it's like a big time, producer like a Joe Ciccarelli who came in here and produced the Broken Social Scene when they were working here, or whether it's somebody just getting their career off the ground, seeing how different people, different producers, different engineers, and different artists approach it, so eye-opening.
I bet.
And getting to be in the room and getting to be a fly on the wall for all that stuff, and in many cases getting to contribute, in some cases significantly, to those things, was really, really eye-opening. There's so many friggin' ways to make a record, man. There's so many ways to do it.
Well, let's go out on this then, though. I still am curious what you think the next thing will be, if you can think of it.
Like the next technology or the next boom?
So mono, stereo, Dolby, X. What is X?
What is X?
Yeah.
I think the big thing is going to be on the playback side. So I've got this tool now to create these instructions of like where to place things in a 3D sound field. Yeah. On the consumer playback side, it's really still developing. I would love a world, and I imagine a world where maybe when I'm like in my 80s and I'm aging and my ears are shot and I can't do this anymore, to look back at photos of my studio that had a bunch of speakers like mounted and hanging off the wall, and thinking like, that was ridiculous.
Yes.
Like
it'll get to the point where it's like, oh, I mixed in my head. What, Grandpa, you didn't do that? And be like,
exactly.
No. Yeah.
It's hard for me to say specifically what it was, but just imagine a situation where it wasn't cables and it wasn't physical speaker drivers and things like that. What if it was just some like wallpaper you put up in the room, or like, I don't know.
Ooh, yeah.
You know what
okay, maybe that.
You know what I mean? I want to look back on this fondly, but I also I want to look back on all the hoops we jumped through to create audio.
To see where it got.
How stupid that looked and how insane that was. I
Totally.
think that's where we'll go, and I wish I could tell you the specifics of that, but
For
time
sure.
will tell. I mean, all I know is that in my decade plus of doing this, there's things that I can do now that if you asked me to do them 10 years ago, I'd have just flat out laughed at you. Like if you messed around with
5 years ago in some cases.
Oh my God. It's amazing how far things are going. Like, I don't know if you've messed around with any of this like stem separation technology. Like,
no.
Like now you use Logic, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now in the new version of Logic, see if you can like find that feature. You can take a mix that's like already done.
I don't have the licensed version of Logic. I
didn't hear that.
Beep beep. Yeah.
But anyways, all that to say, there's technology out now where you can take a finished mix, like, and I can take the drums out. Like,
okay, I see. You can take a finished
the vocal
mix
out,
and you don't need to have.
You don't need to have the multi-tracks. You can just like
take that one track that you get from Spotify or something
and turn the vocal up or turn it down or whatever. Like if somebody asked me that 10 years ago, I'd be like, no, you can't. But now you
idiot.
can.
Yeah. Wait, so no, we don't need to get this would be a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
We can wrap it up. But is that technology using AI, or how do you even do that?
My understanding is that they've trained some algorithms to detect what a vocal sounds like, what the spectral profile of it is.
Okay, got it.
It learns to recognize that, and it goes through the song and sort of fetches all the
ones
and zeros that represent a vocal and
right, because they can just data. Wow, that is fucking crazy. Technology is insane.
But anyways, all that to say, I never imagined a day that could happen, and I'm just really excited for what unimaginable things are coming in the future. Or maybe it all just stays the same, and that's fine, because technology doesn't always fix everything, does it?
Oh yeah, I'm certainly not bringing it up in terms of fixing. I'm just in terms of going further.
That's a whole other philosophical discussion.
That's a whole other thing.
Day.
Yeah, I don't do that podcast. I think other people are doing that podcast. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyways,
thank you so much for coming on. It was cool to talk about all this. Is there anything? Normally I ask this because musicians or whoever will have something that they're putting out. But do you have anything to promote, or anything you want to promote, or just yourself working with you? You know.
Man, I don't know. Like, go check out all the amazing artists I am working with and have worked with. Go check out Alex Southey's music.
Yeah, I guess we didn't talk about it, but yeah, Alex and I worked together on my EP Common Fantasies and have chatted in and amongst some other stuff that appeared elsewhere. But yeah, the Common Fantasies experience was fun. It was in Union, where Alex is right now.
Yeah, and it was also in those early days of me kind of figuring out how to use Dolby Atmos, and we kind of went down a few of those rabbit holes too.
And it made sense, because for anybody listening to this and who is familiar with Common Fantasies, like, yes, it's pretty much a rock thing, but there were a few Radiohead-esque, like, atmospheric little bloops and bleeps that you and I wanted to do.
Feedback loop things,
Yes, and so it worked for that, right? It made sense for Dolby Atmos. Yeah.
Anyways, I would just say, I have a website, audiogamble.com, and my Instagram is audiogamble. And
it's a great name.
I use it to promote the great art that entrusts me with technically seeing it through. And I'm extremely lucky to have gotten to work with some great artists over my time, including yourself, and go check them out. I'll just promote that, because art and experiences is what it's all about in the end, and I'm just so lucky I get to be in a position to support that.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.